Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Small Time Songwriter. My name is Angel Corsi and I'm of course your small time songwriter. Today we're talking to my homie Chris Moyse from Nashville. He's a singer-songwriter and he also does some cool woodwork stuff, so I want to talk to him about that if there's time. But he most importantly just got 5th place in Songwriter Serenade. If you don't know about the songwriter competition circuit, the subculture within a subculture, it's hopefully something we're going to get some enlightenment on. I could use it myself. I'm kind of I don't really like to spend money on competitions. It's not really my bag. I don't think it's kind of in my head about whether I'm talented enough to do it, but the other one is just, it just doesn't seem to suit me in my particular path, right? So I tend to avoid them. But maybe Chris will change my mind and maybe he'll put me on a different path, or maybe he'll put you on your path for the first time. So we're going to talk to Chris Moyse today. And if you're watching on YouTube, you might have noticed I fixed my camera. My camera's fixed. It's working. And as usual, I'm running my Rode NT1 5th generation to my Tascam Mixcast 4. So yeah, let's get to the episode. All right, buddy. Thanks for joining the podcast. If you don't know, because I don't expect my friends to ever know what's going on with all of our little projects. Small Time Songwriter is for anybody that's basically not Taylor Swift or John Mayer or someone really that can sell out an arena. It's just about the rest of us kind of working our way through it and figuring things out, and just just trying to find our way and make our way through it, because it's always been kind of a balance for me when it comes to like how do you balance the dreamer part of being a professional artist and also the reality part and the system that we happen to be living in part of being a professional artist. So thank you for joining me today, buddy. This is Chris Moyse. What's up, Chris?
What's up, dude? So glad to be here. You asked me to do this a while ago, and then recently I was like, "Hey, Angel, what's up? When are we doing this?" And you were like,
Yeah.
"Okay, okay, okay."
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You were actually the one. I'm. It's not like my friends are beating down the door to help me out with my podcast. So I appreciate you sending a message. Um, one thing I want to talk about before mostly talking about you is like our relationship is very interesting because we're basically just internet buddies.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I think, but for some reason we just get along real well, and we
Yeah.
and it's just something that's really cool. So what do you think about this like new era of networking or connecting with artists, like online, where all of a sudden we're buddies and we're looking at each other now, and I feel like I just knew what you look like all the time. You know what I mean? So it's just that kind of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
so what do you think about that?
Man, I think it's interesting. I mean, it's, especially, and I'll try to not make everything about this because I find myself getting into that topic of conversation a lot. But in terms of the pandemic that we just came out of,
Mhm.
yeah, it's like everybody had to learn how to do this. Like, I'm thinking if I even really used Zoom before all that hit, and I don't think so, but I mean, the good thing is yeah, it keeps us all connected. I think I've hung out with you maybe twice,
Yeah, yeah. Like in
and
3D, in physical touch.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could say, I think I know a fair bit about you. I think you know a fair bit about me. So I mean, that alone, just being able to keep those connections with people, and especially with that songwriting community, it's kind of huge because we're all scattered across the country. Some of us, probably talking about myself mostly, but travel less than we used to
Right.
since
Yeah.
everything went down. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna be starting actually in 2 days. I'm doing my first like Zoom co-write, which I've never done before, but I'm
Oh,
doing
cool.
with a buddy Brian Pounds.
Oh yeah, I know Brian Pounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've
He's
only met him one time, and he was very complaining. So
I was gonna say he's a ball buster, just like us, so you probably
yeah,
get
yeah,
along.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna
Uh,
tell him you said this.
yeah. Brian Pounds, very talented vocalist too. So
He's great. Yeah, he was on
um,
The Voice and all that, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, good
Uh,
songwriter in his own right too.
yeah, but you're right. I think the pandemic sort of had to give us a pivot, I guess, to figure out how to stay connected with each other and do things with each other, and just kind of, co-writing or whatever. Or,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny that you mentioned the Zoom thing, because I didn't even know. um, for me, Zoom was an audio brand. I was like, Zoom has audio. It has a video thing with Zoom, like the mixers and all that stuff. Like um,
I still remember my Zoom MRS 802BD. I don't know why I remember all those numbers,
wow,
but it was my digital 8 track.
yeah.
And I remember getting that thing as like, I don't know, probably a 15 or 16-year-old and just being like, I have like the world at my hands. I mean, now it's so dated. It's
Well,
you
that's
wouldn't even use it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's me, and you've probably seen it if you follow my social media. That's me and my like Tascam love. I love Tascam for
Yeah,
some
you
reason.
love it.
I fucking love Tascam. Tascam's my brand. I was a little disappointed when they got Gibson bought because then they started getting really weird with the business decisions. But that's Gibson for you.
That's Gibson for you. As I have my Gibson guitar right next to me
Yeah, yeah,
here,
yeah.
but they're hit or
I
miss.
I always joke around that Gibson has one guitar and it's not the Les Paul, it's the J45.
That's it, man. And I just came back from a folk fest and it was like all Gibson J45s as
Yeah.
far as the eye could see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Zoom has been a really great tool to keep us, somewhat connected. It can be a pain in the ass in its own right. It's always good to have people in real physical form, but
Yeah.
I think if you can get an approximation, this is what you can do. So I really appreciate you hanging out with me today, buddy.
I'll see you in real life someday soon, my dude.
Yeah, you got to come out here to Colorado. I'm setting stuff up, man. I'm moving fast. I
I
move
love
fast.
it, man.
That's
It's
how I
amazing to me too. I feel like you moved less than a year ago.
Yeah, I'm
And
7 months in this month, I think.
everywhere I look, you set up these coffee shops shows, and I mean, like coffee shop shows. Really, it's a lot more than that. But
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about it. But yeah, I guess these rooms where you're kind of inviting out, little seasoned songwriters, up and coming songwriters, and creating your own community in less than a year after moving there. That's wild.
Yeah, man. I'm just not. I don't got a pause button. I'm just always on. I'm always going. That's just how I am.
Get
Um,
it done.
yeah, and it's working out this time because I'm not forcing my poor wife Rachel into a business or anything like that. I'm just sticking to the music stuff. So
Keep your overheads low, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just setting up shows. I'm not making paninis. I swear. You know
Swear, swear, swear.
what I mean? So man, thank you. I just really appreciate all my buddies doing this kind of thing because it does help me out. I mean, part of this podcast is not really because I'm trying to expand a particular audience. Like, I do know that I'm slowly creating a voice for people that just are kind of making their way. I've learned that over the few years that people are looking for this kind of pocket because with like things like DIY musician and CD Baby and all these other things, they're kind of like they're always kind of like a couple of steps ahead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
how do you build your audience? Connect with your fans. Well, how do you get fans? You know what I mean? And I think that's why I made the podcast because I was a little terrified because you talked about like the pandemic thing. Like I was moving to a new state. I didn't know anybody, didn't have any friends, no connections, and I was also just getting out of being just a business owner guy instead of a songwriter guy again. So it's not like the venues had my name on their wait list for the bookings after the pandemic. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's just like pretty much starting from scratch, and I realized
Yeah.
like I can really talk to people like you who've been doing it for a while and have learned some stuff and hate some stuff and love some stuff and
Yeah.
show me the way. So could you talk to me a little bit about you? Like tell me about your story, tell me how you got started and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I did the whole thing, I went to college, I went to University of Connecticut. And and then after school I was living at home with my folks. I think I lived home for 2 full years after school, which was too long, probably a year and a half too long. Yeah, and I mean that whole time, I was playing cover gigs. I was really kind of too chicken shit scared to write my own songs. Just because I think at that point, because I had played so many cover gigs and kind of acquired some skills, I would play these songs. I think I would perform them well, and every like here and there a little bit I'd try to write, and I was just like, there's just no way that anything I write's gonna stack up to these songs I already play.
Right.
So why?
What were the cover songs were you
Oh man, it was like just a lot of what my parents raised me on. I mean, it was, James Taylor, Bob Dylan,
Yeah,
Joni Mitchell.
gotcha.
Actually, I wasn't playing Joni Mitchell, but they did raise me on that. But
Yeah.
Stones, The Dead, Beatles, the band, kind of all that stuff.
Oh, I'd never even made the connection that you have like a little hidden Rolling Stones thing in you.
Oh,
That's cool.
I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I do. I just made that connection. That's so interesting. Okay, go on.
Yeah.
Go
So
on.
yeah, so basically, yeah, and then after a couple years of living home, I was like, all right, where am I going? Originally, I was going to move to Memphis. I don't really know why. People ask me that, and I'm like, maybe I just can't recall, or maybe I just thought it was a cool sounding city. I knew that they had music
Yeah.
there, so I was basically prepared to leave my job. I think I gave him 4 weeks notice, and then in that 4 weeks, my cousin called me and he said, I just went to Nashville. Nashville's really cool. You should check it out. So I decided I'm gonna move to Nashville instead of Memphis.
Really, that was the decision. You just it was not like set up like most people go into their mecca, you know what I mean? It wasn't like this is where the Skags people are and all that stuff. It's just
That's it, man. And it's like honestly, Angel, like I'm very I consider myself a very risk averse person too.
really.
Like I really think it was just kind of an alchemy of like needing to move so bad that I was like, I'm just gonna move really far away from home and like kind of wanting a different culture.
Yeah.
Definitely the fact that it was Music City, that pulled me into.
Yeah.
But people ask me too there because it's 10 years ago now. It's 10 years in January that I moved here.
Right.
People are like, well, did you move here for music? And it's really not that cut and dry. I think it was just like a vague notion of like, what's going on down there? I like to pursue this a little more. And then, man, like I moved here, and I want to say within a few weeks, I started going to some open mic nights, and I just caught the bug. And like, you can throw a stone from any house in Nashville and hit a venue that's going to have a great singer songwriter that night,
Sure.
which is
Yeah.
for better or for worse, because now I'm a very small fish in a very, very big pond.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just, yeah, it's just like it's osmosis, man. It just seeped into me, and then enough time passed, and I was like, all right. Um, I think somebody told me too, because I had a similar conversation as what I'm saying to you, where I was like, the songs I'm going to write are never going to stack up to these songs that I already play, even though they're not mine.
Yeah.
Somebody was like, cool, you're right. So go write some bad songs.
Yeah, that's good.
And 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 I was like, well, why would I write bad songs? And they're like, so that you can write good songs. I was like, oh, that's how that works. So I started writing some horrible songs,
Yeah.
but it was like, so scary. It felt like such high stakes to me too. Like there was almost a permanence in my mind of, if I put this on paper, not on paper, but I put it in my phone,
Yeah.
like who's gonna see that? So people are gonna know that I'm over here writing bad songs. Like that's scary. But you do that, and then you talk to people, and you
It's
get really vulnerable, and you play with people who are better than you, and you let them critique your songs, and then you go to shows and you watch, okay, well, this person who's performing, what are they doing? What are some of the mechanisms they're using? And every time you do that, you try to go home with something else, and then
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
in your own rudimentary, unpolished way, kind of, bring it into your own, your own thing, but try to adopt some of that. But
Yeah, man, I hear you on that. I think one of the things that I preach a lot is I call it sort of like the performance or talent ladder, right?
mm,
And because I'm a real big believer in critique and leaning on your culture, right? I don't call
yeah,
it community because I just resonate with like the idea of like culture, cultura, right? So it's just kind of like for me, I just kind of like look at it like it's on this ladder I express it or I explain this ladder, this talent performance experience ladder, as like there's always someone above you and there's always someone below you and there's even more people right beside you. So
yeah,
your goal as an artist is to reach down and help out the people that are trying to climb up the ladder, and reach up when you need help to see if those guys will help you out, and then always when you're struggling to lean on the people that are right beside you. You know what I mean?
that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was it's just something that I've really like embraced in the last few years. And I think you're an example of that, because I always when I talk to people when I talk to, I mean, I talk to you just like a homie, but like what I'm really talking to you about also with music stuff is like, I care about what you write and what you do. And you inspire me in a way where I'm just kind of like, I wish I could write like that, but I need to kind of like find these things that are like a little bit of what Chris is doing and then just kind of put it into my weirdness or whatever. You know what I mean?
You're sweet.
But what I'm saying, what I'm asking you is like, what do you think of that? What do you think about critique and its importance? Because we all know the people. Like with Nashville, it's always two things, right? You either love it or you hate Nashville, right?
Mm,
You're either the
mm.
person who like went to Nashville and fell in love with everything that's happening there and loved the critique, or you're the person that went there and hated all the critique that you got and didn't feel like you were as good as you thought you were, and then you just kind of you bailed on it, and then you hate Nashville because it's full of elitists or whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on all that?
Man, critique, that was something that, and still to this day, right? Especially as songwriters, we tend to have kind of because we feel a lot, we can have fragile egos, I guess.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Well,
so
because we're
it took me a
narcissistic
long.
as hell.
Yeah, that's it, man. It goes back, definitely goes back to that. If your main thing is look at me, look at me, look at me,
Yeah,
listen to me, listen to me, it's
right,
like
right.
that comes with some other,
Yeah, that's what I say all the time. If you're a person that needs a spotlight on you to go, look what I could do, then you
yeah.
got your own things, you know.
But I kind of look at it. I look at critique as like, maybe it's a cheesy metaphor. It's a little trite, but it's just exercise. Like I go out and run, and I'll run 20, 25 miles a week, and people are like, "Oh, you're a runner. You love running." I'm like, "No, I love being in shape and feeling healthy." So
Mm,
I look at critique as kind of the same way, where I do that. I used to do that a lot more, I think, especially as I was kind of honing my skills and stuff. But, I put myself in these really vulnerable situations with a lot of times with either my peers or songwriters who were better than me, even where I'd be like, all right, give me what you got, like rip it apart, go ahead.
right.
And some of that stuff really hurts, especially when you're trying to learn to write and you're just like, I just want to be good. I want to do it well.
Yeah.
But you do enough of that and you join enough of these, kind of songwriter groups, and they have their downsides too, I'll say that.
Yeah. We'll
And
talk
I
about the
think,
downsides. I want to hear about the downsides too.
yeah, just that. We'll just focus on the downsides.
Well, I just want balance, you know what I mean? Because
I get you. Yeah. Well, it's just a lot of it comes down to style. Like you got to accept that too. Is if you're going to let somebody critique you, you have to have thick skin, one, but you also have to have the ability to take everything with a grain of salt,
right,
because you put yourself in the position to be critiqued. So don't be defensive if somebody says something,
right, right.
but also understand too for yourself. Just because somebody said something doesn't make it true.
Exactly. So
It's
I always say critique is what I like to tell people is critique is just it's like a way for you to find your truth of what you're doing. So like it
Mhm.
doesn't it's not really based upon a good or bad scenario. It's based upon listen to it with everything that you have so that you can decipher what the true part of what they're saying is saying. So eventually they're going to touch on something that you know that you should be working on,
Yeah,
and some things they won't, because it's like art is a stylistic thing. There's no real like equation for art, right? So it's not really based upon like this is good or this is bad. It's just based upon this is true or this is not true
right,
about what you do, because we all have
right.
such varying styles.
It's true, and there's subjectivity to take into account too. I mean, I guarantee, like, if somebody sat you and I down, played us some of their songs, we may feel similarly about it. We may not. You may be like, "Hey, that's too little too country for me," or and one of us may be more lyric oriented, one of us is more melody oriented. So yeah, I mean, that's just to talk about the downsides. I think some of these like songwriting groups I have been part of before, maybe I left because after a while I was like, it can feel like sort of like a homogenization.
Mm, Yeah,
especially in Nashville, where it's like
very
you have to
commercial.
do this, you have to do
Yeah.
exactly this, and
Well,
it's
it's a
like,
commercial driven city, right? So it's like
yeah,
one of
yeah.
those things, it's I think you remember, do you still talk to Eddie Signs? You remember Eddie, my buddy Eddie?
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah.
So he was in Nashville for a while because he did Belmont. He went to Belmont,
Hmm.
um,
Right.
and I went to an LA school. So we're like have different. We come to songwriting with different ways. Like mine's kind of hippie artist life, and his is commercial, uh,
Sure.
pop writing kind of thing. So we clash a lot on that, but we've always found our conversations very fascinating because it is kind of like that. You can be absorbed into the community, and I think it's like that's why it's important, like you said, like every critique you should take with a grain of salt. Like you really just are taking on the critique so that you can find what kind of artist you are. You're just kind of figuring out this is true. Because at the end of the day, like the problem with critique is that we all know that the truth is in it sometimes,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
Ange, you could sing that better, but you're being
Hmm.
lazy. You know what I mean? Or you could fix it. You can find a better line than that, but you just want to do another rock in a hard place. And now, metaphor.
And a lot of times that truth can be something you already knew,
Yeah.
which can be some of the toughest things.
And
If
then
it's
you get,
already something that you felt,
yeah,
like a little
insecure.
self-conscious about, and somebody drops that on you, you're like, and admittedly too, and I see this with a lot of younger artists now too, and I mean I can still be guilty of it sometimes. I think I'm a lot better, but I put myself in these positions to be critiqued. Somebody would critique me, somebody I respected would critique me, and then I get defensive. Well, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. No,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but you're not getting what I'm saying with this. And it's like, well, after a while I learned, like, shut up. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. But also, like, there's a lot of good stuff to be taken from just like, it's like therapy, man. It's like,
Yeah.
you go to therapy, you sign up for this thing, and believe me, being critiqued is not therapeutic in any way, but in terms of getting to your end result, I mean, you kind of got to dig through the muck, and
Yeah, it's really like a filtering device for humility, right? You're just kind of like figuring out how, because we got to be so humble in this business. Like there's always someone way better than us, have better opportunities for whatever reason. Could be because they're legitimately and objectively more talented than us. Could be that they're just better packaged than us. Could be that they're more internet savvy, like social media savvy or
yeah,
whatever. And
yeah,
I think, yeah, man, I love talking about this subject because I do a lot of workshops, I do a lot of seminars and stuff, and I get so much pushback with this kind of stuff. And I always try to say, like, you don't have to. First of all critique is optional if you really think about it. So
yeah.
that's first. So you're putting yourself in the crossfire in the first place. So if you don't want to
Hmm.
be there, just don't ever ask. You know what I mean? And then the second thing is like understand that like no one is telling you how to do your art. They're
Yeah,
just telling you how they perceive your art, and then you decide what's true and what's not true and continue forward. Like that's the job of the artist, is just to make the art, and that's it. And if you're
yeah,
asking for any kind of critique for expansion, for like wanting to enhance what you have, because it's like I said, when I listen to you, I think about like, oh man, I really like how he does that pull off stuff with the guitar all the time. He like adds a little pull off. So I kind of that's like one of the things I try to steal from you all the time is I hear.
steal away. I stole it from somewhere too,
Yeah,
so.
I try to include a lot of pull off stuff because I just feel like when it's just us and an acoustic, it's good to have those little ghost notes in there. And yeah, so I think like that is the thing is like your job as an artist is to make the art. If you decide that you want critique, go in knowing that you want to enhance what you have. Therefore, you're going to have to look for the truth in the statements and
Yeah.
sift out accordingly, right? Um, yeah. So, were you going to say something more?
Yeah, I was also gonna say too, and I kind of started to approach it like that and talk to people. Like we have a friend, Jackson Emmer,
Yeah.
and he. This sounds silly, and I'm sure a lot of songwriters would be like, "Yeah, well, I'd do that," but he just approaches this shit like a job. Like
Yeah.
before he goes on the road, like he was telling me, he'll sit down and like he'll play all of his songs 3 times a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think he wants to do that. I think he does that because it's a job, but it's the same like with being critiqued too, where I look at it, I'm like, well, if you work a desk job or whatever day job, you have a boss. That boss is giving you performance reviews, and those performance reviews are, I don't know, they're making you better, they're making you a more valuable employee.
Right.
But if you look
But
at it as like, well, this is you're self-employed, this is your business,
yeah, I like that. That's
then
good.
do everything you can to get better. And if it stings or whatever, then that's something you have to learn to have thicker skin along the way. But and the reason I harp on that so much is just like that's how I got to be. Yeah, I don't know. That's how I got to a point where at least I like some of my songs, and or at least the ones that see the light of day. It's just like do
Yep.
the work. It's not fun. I know we have egos and stuff too, and we're also big, sensitive, overly egoed buffoons. I don't even know, but
Yeah.
it's like that's the work to me. That's
I
like
like that. I like that idea of like a performance review because really the audience is your boss, right? Like we're
yeah,
your audience, not an audience. I think that's
yeah.
their misconception is that we're always chasing other people's audience instead of chasing our audience,
Yeah.
And
And sometimes that's the best critic too. It's not your peer that like
yeah, yeah,
is as obsessed about songs with you are and is really gonna like notice those weird little internal rhymes and then oh this thing you did in the first verse, you brought that little tiny thing back in the third verse and stuff.
yeah,
Sometimes it's just like going as much as it can kill you, it's like going to a bar or going to whatever venue where people don't know you,
yeah.
and that can be your true
That's what open
uh,
mics are for, right? Yeah.
yeah, that can tell you more than anybody else is going to tell you about a song. But
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. Because
yeah,
I have that same feeling with me. Because like what I do with my critiques now is I have these little I have these little reference points of knowing when I'm not going to take the critique to the next level. And one of them
mm,
is if anybody starts talking to me about music theory, because I'm never looking for music theory. I'm not going to learn enough music theory by the time. So if someone goes, "I love how you did that diminish on I'm just like, okay, you're out. I'm not going to be reaching out to you again." So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, it's kind of related to all this like critiquing talk and all that stuff. But where do the songs come from for Chris Moyse? We all kind of dig deep into different areas. Some of us are folk writers and novelists, and some of us are autobiographical. What is the process for Chris Moyse when you're taking on a song, and where are they coming from?
yeah. Somebody asked me that question recently. They said, "How many of your songs are autobiographical?" And I was like, "Well, really, all of them. I mean, it's. I think when I first started writing, it was, yeah. Again, I wanted to be a good songwriter, but I think even as importantly as that, I would say was kind of the therapy of
Mm.
being able to just see what thoughts come out, just sitting down and kind of writing about yourself and your experiences, and then kind of using that to process, whether it's subconscious or conscious, whatever's kind of going on in your head.
Now, why do you
And then
think?
after a while of doing that and just feeling like, do I want to be another white guy with a guitar just singing about myself on every song? And then so
and then
you,
and then you said yes for about 5 years, and then
as a matter of fact, I do. And as a matter of fact, I'll try to build a career that way.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then after a while, it's just like, well, you want to step into different genres. You realize, like, when you play shows, especially these days, it's a lot to ask to keep somebody's ear for, I was going to say a 45-minute set, but really sometimes even a verse chorus.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. You're right.
so you try to use different genres, and then you kind of try to start writing these. I don't know that I've ever been like a story songwriter. I think I have some songs that sort of hint at that a little bit, but I mean, also in doing that, you kind of get to step into these different worlds and step outside of just your world. But then you also realize once you step into these different worlds that you're bringing a lot of yourself into that too. So even
Yeah,
songs that I'm like, this is entirely not autobiographical, I can still go through and go, well, that's me, that's me,
yeah.
there's a bit of me here.
How important do you think that is for a songwriter to do to always put little pieces of themselves in the material, whether they're making up the breakup or not?
I would say it's extremely important, but I would also say probably for most people, I think it's a little inevitable. Like I don't know that I've ever met somebody I've talked to that was like, yeah, I can write these songs where there's no part of me in it. I'm trying to think of somebody who might do that, but like maybe like Tom Waits with some of the characters he writes and stuff too. But I have a strong inkling that he would probably say there's still whatever experience, even if it's something you observe in somebody
Yeah.
else, that's still your
Tom Waits
observation.
says one of my favorite quotes about the Muse. He says
Got so many.
he has so many, but one of the ones that I really love is the one he says where he hates it when the Muse talks to him in traffic because he's in his car going, "I don't have a fucking pen." But he treats it like a magical force, you know what I mean? I think
Uh-huh.
that's what he's always channeling through. I talked to another mutual friend of ours, Shawnee Kilgore, and
Yeah, yeah. I love
she's kind of
Shawnee.
yeah, Shawnee's the best. I love her to death. But
Yeah,
she's also like someone that kind of looks at it as like she's got this really strong balance of like it's a job, but also there's a magical element to it. And
for
I,
sure.
I just don't have that, dude. I don't have that mentality. I'm like so blue collar with songwriting. Like I just pound on it until it comes out. You know what I mean? Like
I think that's bullshit. I don't buy it.
I don't know, man. I like when we're having the conversation when I was having the conversation with Shawnee about the Muse, I said, she said, you have to let it come to you and listen to when the opportunity strikes, that kind of thing.
Mm.
And I told her, I don't know, I treat the Muse like it owes me money. I go like, hey, you come here. Come here. We're writing a song today. You know what I mean?
I was just talking to I'm sounds like I'm name dropping here. She was a judge at a festival I played, but I was talking to Susan Gibson,
Mhm.
who wrote I was gonna say Dixie Chicks, now just the Chicks, but she wrote Wide Open Spaces. I
Oh
think she
wow.
wrote it when she was like 23 or something too.
Mhm.
But we were talking about songwriting. She was critiquing me, which is, a huge honor to even have her critique my songs. But I turned to her at one point and I was just like, I said, "Do you have fun writing songs?" And she was like, and I think she just kind of turned it back on me and was like, "Well, do you?" And I was like, "No." I was like, I've never had fun writing songs." Um,
Never had fun writing songs. We're gonna have to
but
look into
but then we but then we talked about that more, and she was like, "You know what? I think I kind of agree with you a bit. Like it's you love those moments, like that moment, and I don't think this will come off conceited because I think every songwriter has it. But where you give yourself chills, where
Oh
you come
yeah.
up with a line and you're just like, oh man, that's good. Like I'm proud to have that. And those little gems, it makes it kind of worth digging through the muck. But so I get what you're saying about the blue collar thing, about kind of grinding it out. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing about my songwriting process that is fun per se until it's done or it's close to done.
Yeah.
But there's still heart in it. It's still I still love it,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was
Yeah, I look at it like
respectfully saying it was bullshit when you said that you're just a blue
well, I
collar
just look at
writer.
it I look at it very similarly. I guess if we had to really dissect how I feel about it, like the magical part is the fact that we get to do it at all. Like
Yeah,
look at it sort of like I always look at things through like the eyes of my dad or something. Like that dude will dig a hole because he's bored, you know what I mean?
mm,
And I just like that kind of idea. I'm not much of a dig a hole guy these days, but I am very much like I have that mentality of we just doing the motion is what the reward is. It's not really like what I will say it's a lot of fun to perform the songs once you have the songs written and you're performing now and you're trying to rehearse and stuff and you're
yeah.
looking for the new moments for the audience. That's a great time. But speaking of which,
What
what is your approach to live music with your live shows?
man, that's like kind of became my obsession in the past. I was gonna say 5 years, probably even longer than that, but uh just being as good as humanly possible on stage, like just
Love it.
constantly striving for that and just watching like
I
because
love
I
that
mean there's
kind of
cats who go out in Nashville that you'll see play and like they can hold somebody just by themselves with an acoustic guitar. They can hold whatever audience you throw at them for an hour.
yeah.
And it's all these like stuff that you shouldn't even talk about, but it's all these little minutia of like even like just something as silly as like where you look at what part of the audience at what
Yeah.
part of that you
Yep.
sing like and again stuff that is gross to get into because it's just like how the
Takes the magic
sausage is
away. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's like how the sausage is made stuff, but it really is just like going to school. Like, a lot of people go to shows and God, I make myself sound so drab, but a lot of people go to shows and enjoy shows. Like I enjoy shows. Sometimes I have a couple friends that are just that good that they can pull me out of the
The
student part
category.
of my
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
But like when I go to shows, I'm usually like just taking mental notes and I'm being
Yep.
like,
Yep.
or even on the negative side too, like where did this person lose the crowd? I love looking at the crowd when I've seen something happen,
Yeah.
whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and just seeing like, are they reacting the same way I am? Where did this person lose them and why?
Yeah, you
You
see,
know?
man, this is why I know. This is why I know I love you because we're very similar in that sense. Like we want to know how the magic trick is done. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And some people are so. I get jealous of other friends of ours and friends of mine that like know how to turn that off and know how to like
yeah,
enjoy the magic. You know what I mean? But I just don't have that, man. I'm looking at like, oh, where's the mirror at? Where's the drop panel or whatever? You know? And I love it.
yeah.
It's fun, but it does take a lot to get me out of that mode. You know? But yeah,
And studying that too can, learning how the magic trick is done and inherently is going to remove the magic for you or remove some of the magic for you.
yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's necessary too if you want to be a magician.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's
Not to name
perfect.
drop my own song titles here, but
That is perfect. That is perfect.
yeah,
Okay, so you were talking about you were getting critiqued by someone at a competition you're at. So I want
yeah.
to talk to you about competition because
Sure.
I get a lot of questions in my little culture community about competitions and whether they're
Mm,
the right thing or the wrong thing. Or so I guess from your point of view, because you've done more than this one, you've done a few of them over the years, right?
mhm.
And you've won some, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you, as someone who doesn't join the competitions, especially because it's like 50-50, don't think you're good enough for the competition, and also the other 50 is like, I could spend $30 on a cable, and then I could play my show that I'm got booked on Wednesday or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, what are your thoughts on this whole experience, being a veteran competition guy
Oh,
now?
a veteran. We're gonna give me that. I'll take it. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, how many have you done by now? I mean, you've done a few and you've won a few. So,
Yeah, the one I just did this weekend is Songwriter Serenade, and I've done that twice. I mean, the group this year, first of all, was so stacked that typically when I play a competition, I won't say that there's people that I'll weed out right away. That I'll be like, oh, I'm fine. But there's definitely like a core group of people that I'm like, these are really good songwriters. This is kind of my threat, even though the idea of comparing art against art is
well,
kind of
it's just a
ludicrous. But
competitive thing that we do. We do it at the open mics. Like you see someone good and you're like, I got this. I can,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
And you sign up for that too, it's so however that cookie crumbles, you kind of have to accept that. But man, honestly, and it's cliche. A lot of people say this, especially, at those festivals, but the community that you kind of build doing that is the biggest thing. And then beyond that, it's like just doing as good as you can do for yourself and however the chips fall, accepting that's how the chips have fallen. It's a crapshoot a lot of times. I mean, like I had not to get too into the nitty gritty of it, but like for one of my songs, I had a judge give me like an abysmal score on stage presence.
hmm
And then I had another judge for that same song tell me that she gave me the only 10 out of 10 that she had given for
yeah,
the same song for stage presence.
yeah, yeah,
So that right, and these two judges are huge songwriters in their own right. Like they've written hits, they're nationally touring, like they're great. So you just kind of have to accept that it's a crapshoot. But I mean, yeah, you. So I guess ultimately, it's the answer is you have to be as good as you can be for yourself. Everything else is just like, hey, go there, make some friends, hang out, drink some beer, swap some songs, and just kind of take that experience in. Man, I've been kind of dipping back into songwriting after a bit of a lull for a while, but coming off a weekend like that, it's like it's coursing. I feel it coursing through my veins. Like I'm literally gonna hang up with you after this and pick up my guitar and just be like, "What's up here? Is there anything up here? Like, let me
yeah,
just get it out." Because it's so inspiring hearing some of what these people are doing out there, man. It's just,
yeah.
and I think that's the biggest thing. And that's kind of what makes it cool is you get to go and you get to hear people's best two songs,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And as much as that can be tough, because I remember like I don't know, like, sometimes we compare ourselves to, like, you compare your voice memo or your demo on your phone to some $1 million produced track, and you're like, I'm not as good as, and it's like, well, of course you're not, but it's similar to like
Yeah.
playing your two best songs, but yeah, it can light a fire under your butt too.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then. What are who? Let me try to formulate a question here. Uh, who is the songwriting competition for, and who is
Hmm.
it not for?
Um,
I guess the prompt is if you would want to join the competition or try a competition if, and you probably shouldn't if.
I want to say it's for people with thick skin. I don't know that you inherently have to, that you necessarily have to have thick skin to be able to do it. I think you're going to have a better time if you have thick skin. And also, like, you accept the absurdity and subjectivity of us getting on stage and playing this 3-minute form of entertainment and acting like, it's this big, like, high art, or it's like, it is silly. It's crazy. And, we're all capable of writing great songs, and we're all capable of writing total crap too. So I think, yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole thing of, it's like, well, what do you feel like you have to gain from it? Do you feel like if you go, and because I think you should assume you're going to get last place if you're looking at it as a contest. If you go and you get last place, how do you feel? And most people, yeah, they'd be like, well, I obviously don't feel good about that, but it's like, okay, is it prohibitive enough that you're not going to learn from that? Like, if you're going to get last place and that's going to taint your whole experience as a singer songwriter, then don't go. Then don't sign yourself up for that. Same with like being critiqued, because that's essentially what it is. But it's like, if you're looking to grow and you're looking to kind of roll the dice and take a chance, and you may win a few bucks, you may go home with your tail between your legs, whatever it is. But if you want to grow, I think that can be, yeah, that could be a really good way to do it. But I don't know. I think a lot of people maybe think they want to grow, but they don't. What they want growth. You know what I mean? But they
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to grow, if that makes
Right. Right.
sense.
Expand on that a little more, because I think there's people listening that probably could want to know what you mean by that. Because I
The
I
re-
I
Go
understand
ahead.
what you're saying, but I want to hear your
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just like the result. Like, everybody wants to be rich, and
right.
don't get me wrong, there's loads of people in this country, the top 1%, that they got rich just because their mommies and daddies were rich, or just because they lucked into whatever circumstance, or they were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that get rich by like busting their asses and taking chances and stuff too. And I'm not, other than the metaphor, I'm not really talking about money here, but it's just like,
Yeah.
um, a lot of times people just want the result, but they don't want the work that comes with the pain and the beating yourself up and the vulnerability and all that stuff. And I see so many people who sign up for something like that, or sign up to be critiqued, and then once it comes time to actually see the results or be critiqued, they're like, they get defensive or something, and it's like, that's not what it's about. Your main goal here should be to be, not should be. For me, the main goal is to be as good as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So if I want to be as good as I possibly can, I'm gonna sign myself up for the stuff that sucks. Like, it hurts. Like, if a peer of yours doesn't like a song or whatever, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this keeps coming back to the critique thing. But
I guess it's all rooted
yeah,
in
I don't
that,
know.
right? It's all rooted in that the critique is part of the work. If you
Yeah,
want to grow, you have to put yourself through the paces of growth, which
yeah,
are often painful. That's how come they call it growing pains.
yeah.
um,
Well, it's like uncomfortability too, man. Like, it's so true, and I've been thinking more and more about. There's 1,000 quotes on that too, but it's just like, basically, if you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone on a daily basis, like, then you're gonna stay where you're at. And maybe where you're at is really good, But then do you just want to stay in that place and keep repeating yourself and keep writing the same songs, or
Yeah.
do you want to branch out? Do you want to hear something somebody else is doing and be like, I can't do that. Like in a lot of ways pride myself a lot of my guitar playing. There was people I heard this weekend that I was like, I will never be able to play guitar as well as that person plays
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah.
I'll never be as good a singer as that person can sing.
Yeah.
But that's not a reason to not do something unless all you care about is just protecting your ego, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even just ego in in a prideful way. Sometimes, like for me, my biggest obstacle is like I get very insecure. I get very
Mm.
like,
Hmm.
oh man, I'm not good. I'm not good enough for life, let alone good enough for songwriting. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
like you get into these spaces of just, I always like the way I always explain it to people is like being a person that wakes up every day and has to make a choice that whatever room he's walking in, he's not deciding that everybody already hates him. You know what
yeah.
I mean? So like you already like
Your
it's
self-loathing runs deep like mine.
it's like already in there, man. It's like
Uh-huh.
automated and I'm doing everything I can to just like dial it back. It's the same reason why like I come off very much like a prickly person. People say I'm prickly or they say I'm like got an attitude problem and I tell them like, yeah, I kind of do. It's kind of my default. So like I have to practice being kind and sweet to people. So I constantly say I love them or I say like, I try to support them and stuff like that or I'm really soft with them because I'm making an effort. It's not my default mode. Whatever
Yeah,
factory we went to, our switches got crossed and we're kind of
right.
figuring it out. And so like I guess it's like a long way of saying like ego sometimes when you're afraid of the critique, afraid of the growth, it doesn't always have to come from pride. It can come from like self-loathing, that fear of like this is just gonna affirm that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. This is the strangest reference I'm about to make right now, but I'm a 90s kid. But I remember this may sound weird, but I remember my sister turned me on to Jewel, the artist Jewel, when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I think that was the first time that I don't care what anybody said. Especially some of those early records, like there's some incredible writing there.
Oh yeah.
But she has a song called Pieces of You where it goes through all this stuff. Like basically, I'm paraphrasing her lyrics, but she says like, you call this guy this word, like this disparaging word, and you say this.
Uh-huh.
And then the hook is, do you hate him because he's pieces of you?
Right.
And I think like so much of the critique that I have about other people or criticisms or things that I don't like, it's
Yeah.
stuff that you don't like in yourself,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So the more prickly I am towards somebody else sometimes, it's just me being prickly towards myself.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, I'm a believer in like we all have to make judgment, so judging is not it's only wrong when you put it in the wrong space. It's kind of like mental health, right? Like
Right.
you don't have a mental health problem until it affects your everyday being, right? Just because you're ADHD doesn't mean it's an issue until it's an issue, right? So
Sure.
so I kind of look at like that with judgment and all that kind of stuff too. But I will say the things that rub me the wrong way the most is like the like the haterade stuff, the haters and like people that are complaining about the system that we're in the industry and the
Mm.
whatever. Like the reason why that rubs me the wrong way is because I feel that way too, and I get annoyed, and I don't want to be that way. So I get annoyed by the fact that it's being in front of me. Like, oh yeah, it is true. It is sort of about who you know, but it's not all about who you know. But it is kind of. Or, yeah, you're right. It does suck to get critiqued, and not everybody understands your music. But also, you need to get critiqued, and you need to understand that you need to grow in your music, right? So it's
Yeah.
just constant. It is kind of like that reflection thing, that pieces of you thing. Thanks, Jewel. Thanks for that one.
So good. But it's true. It's like sometimes the least forgiving you are with somebody else, you're just being the least forgiving with yourself, really.
Yeah, yeah,
But that's such an interesting way to put it. Yeah, that's a slippery one too, because I don't know, as somebody who believes in therapy and believes in breaking whatever bad cycles you're in that you don't want to maybe pass on a future generation or whatever, I think it's like, yeah, it's really necessary to do that work to realize like why am I being an asshole to this person?
Yeah,
Musically or personally or
yeah,
whatever it
yeah.
is. And a lot of times the answer is an uglier truth than you want to accept. And the uglier truth might be, oh, that's a me problem. That's not a them problem, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. That's a me problem. My wife Rachel, her mom says this thing that I've sort of tried to remember. It's kind of silly, but it's good. She says, "Not my circus." You know, she's like,
Not my what?
she says, "That's not my circus."
Not my circus. That's great. Yeah.
And she's right. I mean, I have to remember those kinds of things. We run into as we do stuff, as we're like doers and drivers, we run into people that are constantly trying to find. When I was talking about the ladder, right? I finished this metaphor of the ladder to my group or students or whatever I say. At the very top of the ladder, there's someone that reached whatever version of success it is for
Mm.
that person, right? And they're at the top of the ladder. And you know what they're doing? Some of them, not all of them, but some of them, they're shaking the fucking ladder. They're trying to make sure no one else gets up there. And at the
And I
very
hate that.
and at the very bottom of the ladder, there's these people that never take a single step. They never grab anything. They never try to climb at all. But they're shaking the fucking ladder, and they're trying to make sure no one climbs up the ladder too. You know. And I think I just very strongly don't want to be that person. I don't want to be those kinds of people. So I just try to focus on like we got to take care of each other. We got to help
Yeah.
each other, and
Yeah.
we got to grow together. And some of that is painful, but it needs to come from like a loving place rather than like a power play. You know what I mean?
That's such a perfect metaphor too, and I think a lot of it, like you just see people like they come into a position where they've reached whatever level of success or respect or adulation where they then have the opportunity to be gatekeepers. If you're in the opportunity to be a gatekeeper and you're not letting as many fucking people through that gate as possible,
Yeah.
you don't deserve to be in that position. Like, and I know like there's people that you know, gave me their time, resources, like gave me huge opportunities when I moved here. That I look back on and I'm like, why did this person even talk to me? Why did they even sit down and talk about songs to me when I had no idea what I was doing? But
Yeah.
now being in that position, and coming off a weekend like this where there are some young guns there. I'm 34. Some of the I think Christina who was there, I think she's like 23.
Yeah.
Like
Shout out to Christina Cavazos. Congratulations to getting in there.
she's so good, man. She's so good. We were all talking about it too. But I think, and I guess I wouldn't even say this to her because she's her own established artist in her own right. But, it's my job now for whatever position I've got, and definitely not success, but maybe success in the terms of like, I think I can write a good song now, that it's my job to then pull other people up.
Yeah, man. That's the thing. That's
And
the ladder. You're on a certain status and you're just helping out whoever's below you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's the way.
but
That's
we also, it's tough too because we exist in a culture where everybody wants more than their neighbor. Everybody wants to be the top dog. Everybody wants the most money. And a lot of times you do that by like clawing your way to the top and stepping on faces just to get up there. And
yeah, man. You're right. Let
but
me.
it's like where does that get us? And then you do that for long enough, maybe you get a big fat bank account, but your emotional or ethical or moral you're bankrupt at that point. It's like
See, this is
and
another thing I appreciate about you is that you think about these larger questions. So, like,
yeah.
that's like one of the questions I wanted to ask you today is like, how do you balance your artist life, sort of that daydreamer life, with the reality life of the
Mm.
culture and the existence we live in? Like the fact that we are like in a capitalist kind of thing and all that stuff that everyone hates to hear about, but everyone can't stop talking about because we just keep butting up against it. How do you balance
I think
that part, the dreamer part versus the
yeah.
realistic part?
I hope this answers your question. This is just what I'm thinking of as you're saying this, but basically, I mean, I was pursuing this thing pretty full time. I dropped my debut full-length record March 20th of 2020.
Nice, nicely done. The timing's perfect. Great.
Good PR plan, Chris. Had, three tours that I booked myself to support that record, and then everybody's got their story. Well, then shit hit the fan, and then all
Did
of
you go
that
like
work
this? Did
was
you go, this is gonna go viral? Oops. Is that
oops, it didn't. But going through all that, and what was the question again? I just got sidetracked in my head.
Just how you balance that. How do you balance
Oh
the
yeah,
artist
yeah.
dreamer versus the, you know?
So when so once all that happened, basically I had kind of this old timer handyman carpenter took me under his wing and basically started showing me, carpentry, handyman work,
Mhm.
furniture building. Um, and man, I kind of like in all that felt like I was sort of letting the dream go. But then in all that too, like it also opened me up to being a songwriter again because I wasn't doing it as a career.
Yeah.
Like I think it's really that's why I'm not even sure I could fully answer that question. I think it's really hard to find that balance. I mean, it's there's some admittedly probably subtly or otherwise toxic things that are involved with trying to make a career out of like being the person on the stage that people are coming
Yep.
to pay money to come see.
I agree.
Uh, it's difficult, and I think yeah. So I guess suffice to say, I think having another another strong passion that maybe isn't that um, can definitely help you create that balance because if that's your only creative outlet or that's your only therapeutic outlet or whatever it can it's a lot. It's almost like being in a relationship where you don't
Yeah.
have friends,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't have other people you go out with. It's you're
Sure. Yeah.
putting it all in this one person. It's like, well, that's not really balance, like
Yeah, I
so
think people forget about the balance part, you know. I think that's one thing that I keep running into whenever I'm talking to you guys, when I'm talking to my friends, you know, it's like to go back to Shawnee, you know, she's painting houses and stuff like that.
yeah.
Jackson's doing seminars and guitar lessons. Like everyone needs to find that little thing that's like they're also passionate enough about, but they're just not it's not directly fueling this little beast that can really get in the way and of the art.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a man. I think it's just the classic thing of not putting all your eggs in one basket for whatever reason, for success reasons. I think it's. I realized it's also really smart to. This is getting ugly, but to diversify your income streams
Yeah.
too, and
Yeah.
because we saw that all dry up, and then there was a lot of people sitting around twiddling their thumbs, like, "Well, what the fuck? This wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Where'd my job go?"
Yeah. It really reminds
Um,
you that art is a commodity. It's like
yeah.
something that's an addition to living a good life. It's not
Mhm.
the only thing. Sometimes you got to dig the hole, you know.
Yeah, and
All right.
and you also have to have the experiences too. I mean, you have to get out in the world to be able to write the songs. So
Yes.
if you're not having that life balance, if you're sitting home and all you're doing is writing songs for 8 hours a day, that well's going to dry up on you unless you just have some super overactive imagination. But
Yeah.
that well's going to dry up on you. And I've realized that too as I become more and more of a homebody the older I get. It's like a lot of times I'm not going out because I'm like I want to go party or whatever. It's like I'm going
Looking
out
for
because
a
it's
song.
like
You're looking
you
for
got to talk to people, you got to have these experiences, and
yeah,
without
exactly.
that, it's like
Yeah, man. So one of my mentors, they put it in a really great way. They said, birds fly, ducks swim, writers what? And I said, write. And he goes, no, live.
that's so good,
And I
dude.
was like,
That's
oh,
so good.
yeah. Well, okay, so we're running out of time here, and
Okay,
thank you so much for hanging out with me, buddy. I really appreciate it, and your words really meant a lot. I'm sure, you know, I don't have like a huge fan base on the listeners for the podcast, but the ones that do always message me that they really appreciate people's insight like yours. And, you know, so I got two more questions for you.
cool.
One of them, and you got to keep it quick because we got about 8 minutes before this Zoom cuts off. So
Deal. You
the
know I'm verbose.
so the last question is, what does success look like to Chris Morse? The top of the ladder.
I think just what we're talking about, man. Success, like, yeah, we all want to make money, but the thing is that pot gets smaller and smaller. So especially, with capitalism, like success, of course, we always think like, well, how much money are you making? How many listeners do you have on Spotify? How many subscribers do you have on Patreon? Like all this stuff. But I think and I know it's cliche, it's been said before, but I really do believe this. It's just being as good as you can be
Mhm.
and making sure that you're not even seeing that you're constantly getting better, but that you're constantly moving on go to a ladder metaphor, but that you're constantly moving on a ladder. If you're taking a step down, that's fine. You're taking a step,
Yeah,
but you're moving, you're keeping things going.
love that. That's good.
And I think just like leaving room to surprise yourself.
Hmm.
Because I know I can get like obsessed about like this next song has to be like my best lyrical song. And as somebody who considers myself a much better editor than a writer, I can sit with something for years before it ever sees the light of day. So, and that there may only be 16 lines in that song,
Yeah.
but it's kind of learning that is as important as it is to keep trying to be as good as possible. Like I have this little quote written that I have, but it's leave room for magic.
Oh, I
Like
love that. That's good. That's
like
good.
leave room for that kind of nascent early version of yourself that didn't know what they were doing and would just stumble across stuff like that. Honestly, that's success to me. If you can still do that, if you can write at a high level but get out of your own way enough, just for what we do in terms of success, I would say that's probably how I
That's
do it.
top of the ladder for Chris Moyse. Love that. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So your last question was 6 minutes on the clock.
Cool.
This podcast I started this podcast to help me. I was feeling uninspired. I was trying to figure out how to get myself together and try to attack the things that I want to attack from a musical songwriter point of view, rather than the businessman, venue owner guy who's always doing these little projects. I wanted to be more than that. I wanted to go back to being a performer and sharing my songs and my stories. So my last question for you is, what is some general advice you got for your homie Angel over here?
For you,
Yeah, because you've gotten to know me and you know the things that bother me.
that's hard, man. I mean, a lot of that, I guess, would just be responding to what you've said about, like, being bristly and working with people, because that hits home for me too, where I give people a bad rub sometimes. I don't know if it's an intensity, but I think you and I are kind of both ball busters, and that can come back and bite us in the butt sometimes. So if you feel like that's something you should work on, but I mean, and not to kiss your butt, but the idea of you moving to this new state, this new city, and to be kind of curating these shows like you are and giving these up and comers an opportunity, but also getting great songwriters in there, like, it's tough for me to really give advice to somebody who's doing that, because I look at that and I'm like, that's as much as you can be offering back to your community, I feel like.
Well, that's really nice, buddy.
Advice that I may give you as a songwriter would just be some advice that I take, but like, scare yourself, dude. Like, start that song that I don't give a shit if it sounds like a Taylor Swift song when you start it. Write a fucking Taylor Swift song.
Nice.
Like, that's seriously like how I think about it lately, is I'm like, we do these things, or you go through the album recording process or whatever, and you're like, man, I don't know if this song fits on this record. Like, it's just not, it's always you. It's always going to be you.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a situation which I've ever heard somebody play a song that I was like, unless it was contrived or they were ripping somebody off, but I've been like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what my advice to you is, you need to put out an electro pop record.
You got it.
And that's it, man. That's which you need to co-write with me too. That's my advice.
We'll do it. Yeah, man, I love the scare yourself thing. I think I'm definitely on that path currently. I got that little something thing I'm working on, Fabula, and it's literally got a picture of me as a kid, because it was the scariest thing I could put on a cover art for me.
I love that.
All right, man. So you got some dates, right? You got some shows in Nashville and stuff like that going on. Tell
yeah,
us.
May. Let me see. Pull it up my iCal here. May 31st, I am playing at the Listening Room Cafe. Or I think it's just the Listening Room, they call it now, in Nashville, which is kind of a bigger room. I haven't played there yet, so I'm excited. I'm playing that with Wyatt Espelin, and there'll be a couple other people. I think Kate and Cannon may be playing that one, who coincidentally just won the competition we were at this weekend. So. Then June 1st, I'm down in Pensacola, Florida. I'm playing it's called Radio Live. It's to the WUWF radio station down there. They're like NPR affiliated, so that should be cool. But those are the two big ones coming up.
And you can find them on Instagram, CW Moyse, Moyse, not moist.
That's right, not moist.
Moist. All right, Chrissy boy, thanks for being on the show, buddy. I'll see you later.
This was so fun, bud. Love you, dude.
Yeah, I love you too, buddy. Bye.